Hey, it's Mr. Johns, and I just finished building a Foose design Ford FD-100 pickup. This is a Revell plastic model kit, and as you can see by the box here, it's a level 4 and estimated to take about 5 hours or so to build if you take your time and do a good job. I just wanted to share that this was a really fun kit, and my first response to it was that it was a lot easier than I thought it would be. But then I got to some steps that were a little tricky, and that was fitting the axles through some holes, and I had some troubles with a few of the steps at the very end, but I was able to do some modifications to make it all work out. So when you open the box, this is what you first see, just everything wrapped up in plastic, like most plastic kits, of course. And you know, it's one of my favorite hobbies. I love to do it as well as I can each time. And a lot of the things that I teach in my tech class about how to spray paint and sand and things like that definitely work here with plastic model kits, and even more so. This is something you're building with your fingers, and it's really tough to not touch things when they're wet, and it's important to let them dry between stages. And I know a lot of people who build models just don't have the patience, and so they end up with sticky mess all over the place. And I do too sometimes when I want to kind of hurry things up a little bit. But this one is a custom pickup truck that, if you don't know Chip Foose, he's a custom designer and one of the best in the world. He does a lot of really cool custom builds. And this is a pickup truck that his dad owned, and then he inherited and was rebuilding, and then now he's giving it to his own son. So it's a 3-generation truck, which is really cool. So one thing that I'd like to emphasize here, if you can paint the parts while they're on the plastic sprues, that's what they're called, these plastic frames are called sprues, do so. This is a great way to not touch the parts and pieces while you're painting. So here's an example, and do one color at a time. So I don't necessarily follow page 1, page 2, page 3, etc. When I'm painting. Now I do when I'm building, but it always starts off with the engine, it seems like, in most models. But if I'm going to crack open the silver paint, I go ahead and look through the instructions, and I paint everything silver at once. Why not, right? Just get it all done. Then you only have to wash the silver brush out once. So here's engine parts, things that are supposed to be silver in the book, and I don't care. Some of them say aluminum, some of them say silver. I don't care that much. Silver is silver to me. It's the same thing with black, for example. Sometimes it says flat black, sometimes it says gloss black, and sometimes I don't care. I just want it to be black. So speaking of black, that's what I did next. So I cleaned out my brush with paint thinner and then switched brushes, and I painted everything on the sprue black at once. Again, I didn't have to touch anything. I just picked up the sprue and painted all the sides that I needed to, and put them down and moved on to the next color. So that gives it a chance to dry. And what this is a close-up of a vise holding the air cleaner that goes on top of the engine. And so it's a silver air filter with a black chrome, kind of, I don't know if it's chrome, but a black top on the top. And so that's what that was. And so then I switched to gray. There was, in this particular truck, the outside was going to be gloss black, and the interior was gray. And so I'm painting the dashboard here, as well as the door upholstery on the sides in gray as well. And the seats were also supposed to be gray, so it's a good chance to do that. So some people have asked me, when do you spray and when do you brush? Well, I could have, let me back up a little bit. I could have spray painted, everything on these sprues silver, but you can see about half of them are black and half of them are silver. So I chose to do them by hand. But larger parts, oftentimes I will spray paint. And I'll get to that here in a second. But these small pieces, because there was some differences here, if it would have been all gray, I may have spray painted it, but in this case I needed some precision, and so hand painted them. And so here you can see everything silver, everything black, and everything gray all at once on the same cutting board on my table. And then here's an example of when I spray paint. So this frame, the frames are always black, and sometimes they're flat black, sometimes they're gloss black. I just take them outside and spray paint them. And I do 2 or 3 coats, flip them over and do 2 or 3 coats and let them dry. So it's easier, and it doesn't have to be beautiful. It's under the car. And so I just do a quick spray paint job on that. So here is the kind of the almost finished engine put onto the chassis. Okay, so the chassis is the frame of the car, and the engine goes on second. And here's another view of that. So we've got the distributor cap here where the spark plugs go into, and then they go down into the engine and fire off the explosions, which make the engine spin. And then you've got the headers here, the exhaust headers that come down and connect to the exhaust pipes. So you'll learn a lot about car parts when you are building a model, which is one of the things that I really like. So this is flipped over. I've added the exhaust pipes now, so the tailpipes come all the way down here, and this is where they're going to end. Typically they go further, but in this particular custom truck, that is where they stop. And these are 2 different pictures here. I don't know why. I don't know what I'm trying to show here, actually, just miscellaneous parts. And another shot of the same thing. Here's a kind of a zoomed in shot of the coilover shocks, which oftentimes are a different color. In this case, they just called for silver, but sometimes these will be yellow or blue or whatever. I think Monroe shocks are yellow, and so you typically will see yellow. But in this case, it just said silver, so I stuck with that. What's cool about this is if you hand paint them, the little grooves here in between the springs will be darker. If you were to spray paint it, it might get the silver into those cracks, and it doesn't look as nice. So having that kind of dark area looks nice with a spring, so you can see it a little bit better. So decals were a part of this kit, as they are in a lot of kits. And so just put some warm water in a little dish and let them soak for 2 or 3 minutes, and they typically will slide right off. I love the decals, but if you're not careful, they can rip in half so easy. I mean, it becomes wet paper, and your job is to move the wet paper onto the model. And so in this case, I think it did tear a couple times and I had to move it around. But here's the technique for this. Dip your finger in water and get the plastic part wet. So in this case, I dipped my finger and I just got the seat wet with water, and then you put the decal on top of the water, and it allows you to move it around. And then as soon as you get it where you want it, then you take like a paper towel or a tissue, and you just dab the water, or let the water soak up, let the tissue soak up the water, because once there's no water, it's set, and then it dries and it's in place. And so this was not a perfect job, but it definitely was a nicer job than I could have done with a paintbrush. And so that's the value of decals. So here I put on some brakes on the front. I think that's all that picture really is, and then flipped it over and put the wheels on. And so this is when it starts to look pretty cool. And I think this is when I was having some issues. I see a little plastic part here that probably I cut off because I couldn't get it to go where I wanted it to. And so again, in some cases, it doesn't matter. This isn't for a model contest or anything. I'm just trying to make it look cool. But I really love these custom wheels and these tires. And it just, once it's at this stage with the engine and exhaust and the transmission back here, or the transfer case, I guess it would be called. Transmission is here. So engine, transmission. And then this is the transfer case, like where it the spinning motion of the drive shaft transfers and makes the back wheels turn. So, and of course with the four-wheel drive, it does that in both front and back. And with most cars that aren't, it only does that in the front or the back. So here is where I set the unpainted body on the chassis just to kind of get a glimpse of what it would look like. And, you know, it looks great. And you can see I've got my tools in the background. I've got my vise. I've got my Gorilla Glue. I've got my little nail file, which is perfect for sanding, and a little hobby knife. So a lot of things that I need to build a model. I went outside and put this on a turntable, and this is just a cheap turntable. I don't even remember where I got it, but I've used it for multiple things. But it allows you to spin the model around so you can get different angles. I mean, you can walk around it as well, but here I've got 3 different parts that I can shoot with paint and get all kinds of different angles. And remember, the painting process is light coats first, very, very light. So I'm doing gray primer, very, very light coats until it barely covers. And then you start with the color. In this case, it's gloss black. And so here's my first coat, and it barely covers the gray, and it's not supposed to. It's just supposed to lightly coat it. And then each coat gets a little heavier. Let it dry anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes between coats, or longer if you can. It's just going to help. Every coat that gets hardened, the next coat goes on top of that instead of mixing together, and so it just gives you another nice coat of paint. So, and here is a third coat, and you can see the hood is starting to get nice and shiny, as is the I like the fender here on the back of the truck, looking pretty good. So this is a good picture, but I don't love the fact you can see some little bumps, some imperfections in the paint. It's not perfect, but once it's dry, it actually turned out pretty good. So I flipped it over and did the bottom as well. Don't forget, there's parts that you'll see if you pick up the car and look at the bottom. So you want everything to be painted. So, and here is the finished truck, which is dry and back inside. And then when I put it all together, I used a silver Sharpie, which is a really nice trick to adding chrome. And so I did some chrome around the windshield and chrome on the fenders, of course. And I've added the bumpers. It's not quite done yet. I think it's missing a few things on the front here, but it's close. I just had to take a picture of it because I thought it looked cool. And now you can see from this aerial shot, you can see there's a decal on the top of that air filter that says Roush. And you can see it's got the windshield wipers on, and you can see the pinstriping on those gray seats, which really turned out nice. And then there was also a decal with this kit for the wood in the bed. I haven't in the past. I've actually added little balsa wood strips, or just a piece of balsa with little stripes, stripes of silver Sharpie. And it looks okay, but this one came with a decal that is fantastic, that I could not have done a better job with. And here's the final truck finished, and I'm pretty happy with it. So if you get a chance to pick up the Revell kit, do so. I think it was $23 at Hobby Lobby, and a little bit of paint and glue, and definitely worth the money and for the fun that I got out of it. The 4 or 5 hours that I got out of that $25 was well worth it, and now it's part of my collection of model cars. So if this isn't your type of car, go get something else and build something. It is a great hobby, and I hope you try it out. Super fun, and I hope to build another one soon, which I'll share with you. Mr. Johns is out.